Okay, so we're now live on YouTube. Brilliant.
Okay.
It
just says there's a red bar coming across, setting up your meeting. Okay, done. Redirecting to YouTube. Okay.
Perfect. What I'll do is I'll add that to your loop page. Okay.
Okay.
And do you remember how to turn off the chat on YouTube? Remember we did that the other day?
God, yeah.
So you just need to find that setting. So I think it's somewhere when you go into, or if you share your screen with me for a second.
Share my screen. Hang on.
You can turn off YouTube. Oh, sorry, not yet, but when you're in the session.
Let me just. Okay, now. Yeah, okay. So I told them I would put the link to this underneath the link for the classroom. Can you see that in the SIE section?
Yeah, I can see the link to the classroom.
Cool.
So I'll put the link. What do you want me to call it? Just
Loom or YouTube overflow room or Perfect. YouTube overflow classroom or something.
Great, I'll do that.
Thanks.
So if you can just turn off the chat on YouTube.
Yeah, sorry.
So if you go into your...
How the hell do I get back into that again now? Go back into... Oh no, that says stop. How do I get back in? Shit.
So do you see in the Zoom window where you and I are?
Yes.
So do you see the up the top right where it says, live on YouTube?
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So if you click on that.
So view live stream.
Yeah. So go view the live stream.
Okay.
And then the live stream will bring you to the live stream, obviously. But from there, can you get into your
account.
YouTube studio? Yeah, your account.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. No, that's me. That's the video. Hold on. I'm putting it on pause. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
from that screen, if you go to your channel.
Yeah. And into YouTube Studio.
And then click the live button or the go live button or whatever it's called.
Yeah. Okay, that's slowly opening up now. So it'll go into manage.
I'm not sure if you're going to manage or click live because there should be one because your live stream is in progress. So click.
Yes, so click the one that is live.
That is live. So click on it, and then do you see advanced settings?
Advanced settings. Let me see. I'm not seeing advanced settings. Let me see.
Can you share your screen with me for a second?
Sure. Hang on. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah. Great. Okay. If you just go, see the gear icon up the top right?
Yes. Click that.
Click that. And see where it says live chat over on the left?
Yes.
Click that, and then just turn those two buttons off. And save changes.
And save.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
You're ready to rock and roll? So you can close down the YouTube windows there, and now you're just now you just need to worry about Zoom. Just
worry about Zoom. I don't need to worry about anything else.
Nope.
Okay. I'll just stop share for a moment.
Yeah, perfect. You can go get your slides and everything ready there. Do you want me to make the two links visible?
Please.
On the loop page?
Yeah, please. That'd be great. And I'm just going to go into my loop page as well. Because I want to turn off the editing. I don't want them to see the hidden stuff.
So what I might do then is I might let everybody in now to Zoom and turn off that waiting feature if you want.
Okay. Will I open up the Zoom classroom?
I've done that. I've
you've
made
done it. I'll just refresh my
Yeah.
page.
So you
okay.
just refresh your page there. Yeah. So if you want, I can sit silently in the background.
Yeah.
If you think that would be useful, and
yeah.
and you can give me a shout.
And I'll call on you if I'm stuck. I did go back to IT support yesterday, and they did show me how to upgrade. I still can't see auto mute buttons easily.
Okay.
So even though it's upgraded and it's telling me I have the most recent version.
Well, if there's an issue, I can just come in and I can
exactly. That's what I'll do.
And I'll turn on that feature that they cannot unmute themselves. Okay.
Yes.
So that's on. They'll all be muted on entry. So you should be fine to manage them, I'd say.
Okay. So everyone's going into the waiting room now, are they?
Yeah. So I'm going to let them all in now, and I'll turn off my video and I'll sit in the background. But if you need me for anything, just shout.
Yeah. Even leave your video on, Rob, if you want. It's no harm for them to see, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
To see, because I've told them in an email yesterday that you're here. I just want to turn off my editing on. Okay, so I have my editing turned off there. Okay.
Great. Okay, so there's 40 people
let's
waiting
do
to
this.
come in. Let's.
Hi, everyone. We're just going to wait a little while now for people to join us. Hi, Robin. If you want to turn on your videos, please feel free. It makes it less isolating for me if you have your video on. You don't have to. Hi, Lana. Hi, Tristan. I'm just saying hello to the people who have their videos on. I'm not ignoring the rest of you. So as I said, if you want to put your video on, that makes it less lonely for me, but you don't have to. Hi, Owen. Hi, Maura. We give people another few minutes and then I'll start recording, and this will be available for you in that Google Classroom, at that Google Classroom link on our page if you want to refer back to it, or if any of your friends can't make it this morning, you can let them know where it is. Okay, I think we'll get started. I just want to introduce you to Rob Lowney, who I think you should be able to see up in the top left-hand corner of your screen there. Rob is my colleague from the Teaching Enhancement Unit. So the TEU supports us teachers across the university, especially when we start doing complicated things like live streaming and new stuff that we've never done before. So, and Rob will keep an eye on me mainly and to make sure I'm not doing anything daft in this live class with such a big group, although we just have 91, so it might actually be quite manageable, Rob. And I'll just ask Rob to keep an eye on, I'll keep an eye on the chats and so on, but if I miss anything, Rob, you might interrupt me. And Rob, can I just check if somebody just wants to ask a question, can they unmute themselves, or if they raise their hand, can they ask a question?
Students will just need to raise their hand using that icon on Zoom. So if all students want to click the participants button at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar, you'll pull up a list on the right hand side, and there'll be some icons there for you to raise your hand, and that's how Anne-Marie will know that you want to ask a question.
Yeah. So, and if you don't want to ask it orally, you can use the chat button at the end, which allows you to type in a question. Now, there's quite a few people on. We've 95 people on already, so that could get a bit busy. So just bear with me. I'm going to stop a couple of times through this just to check that text chat at the end in case you're asking questions there. So I organized this morning because I feel very remote from all of you guys, and I know I've made podcasts. I've engaged in the formative tasks. I've done all the formative tasks on Loop myself. The formative tasks I was asking you to do during our 9 to 11 sessions on Friday morning, I did all those tasks myself, and I have my responses to those tasks up there. And I did that deliberately to give you some sort of a point of reference so that you could self-assess yourselves when you were doing those tasks on Loop. But what I want to, I just feel, even with the podcasts and even with that material there, I think it's useful to have this session today to try and answer any queries you may have that haven't already been posted on Padlet. So what I'm proposing to do is I'm going to share my screen with you now, and I'm going to just go through chapters 7, 8, and 9 very briefly, just to point you in the direction of the tasks and so on, just in case there's anything you've missed. And then go into chapter 10, which is about the assignment itself, the alternative assignment, which I have made. I've created that assignment to mirror the formative tasks as much as I possibly could. Okay, so they very much mirror what I asked you to do formatively over the last few weeks. So I'm going to share my screen with you now and go into our Loop page with you. So as you know, down here, this is the book with everything in it. And I'm just going to click on this and go down as far as chapter 7. So because of the emergency, I've concentrated on the materials that we hadn't addressed in class together for the purposes of the assignment, rather than making you go back and pull from stuff we did earlier. So chapters 7, 8, and 9 generally form the basis for the alternative assignment for SIE in chapter 10. Okay, and each of those 3 chapters has formative tasks in them, which I have completed. Okay, so in chapter 7, for example, and that's a podcast I did to guide you through some of that way back. So the sessions or the direct teaching I would have done in class, I have provided here. So I've made Loom videos, and then each of these videos here have been interpreted using ISL, but they're the same videos as those up here. So you can watch them whichever format you wish. You've probably done most of that already. Here, this is me talking about the UDL framework. Sorry, this here is me talking about the UDL framework, and there is that same Loom video with interpretation. And further down then is the formative task. Okay, so I asked you to do this task, but I did it myself as well. So this is your feedback. If we had been meeting face to face, we would have done that in the large lecture theatre, and I would have given you feedback in class and written feedback afterwards. So this is your point of reference. And the reason I'm highlighting this is that I suppose in terms of your own understanding of teaching and what you're being asked to do in those tasks, the teaching, my teaching around those tasks and your skills development is in here in these 3 chapters. So and videos like this one here. So for example, I'm asking you to watch the first 10 minutes of this. The first 10 minutes of that explain UDL. And that supports my video here. Where am I? Back up further. I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute, Rob. I think I forgot to record. I did. Whoopsies, sorry. Okay. Sorry, guys, I forgot to record that. So anyway, I'll keep going. I can do a supplementary bit later. So in this chapter 7, the task, the formative task here supports the tasks that you're being asked to do for the actual assessment. All right. And the materials here directly support, they'll support your thinking. They'll help you to think about the responses to the alternative assessment that I have in chapter 10. And likewise in chapter 8. So in chapter 8, chapter 7 that I was just in, we were looking at this chapter here, chapter 7. The focus here is on inclusive pedagogy, inclusive teaching and planning. So you are considering in this chapter the diversity of every classroom you will be in. All right, so you can just make an assumption before ever you walk into any classroom that you're going to have a diverse range of students. Depending on the class you're in, that could be that diversity could be greater or less. It just depends. But you can be sure that there will be a range of learners in any classroom you're in. You can just make that assumption without ever having met any of those students. And this chapter is about enacting planning and teaching on the assumption that you have a wide range of diversity in a classroom. That's what that chapter is about. This chapter then, chapter 8, is more focused on individuality. So when you have individual students, so you may remember when we met face to face, I was talking to you about the new model of teacher support in mainstream primary and post-primary schools. And part of that new model since 2017 is to hand back the responsibility for assessment, individualized assessment, back to schools and teachers. So the SETs, the special education teachers who used to be learning support and resource, but also the class teachers, the school teaching community, have a much greater responsibility to systematically assess individual students as well as to assess on a class level. And in addition, it's always been the case that teachers teaching special classes and children in special schools would have needed that ongoing assessment as well. So this chapter brings you from that consideration of diversity generally into consideration of diversity in terms of one child. So you are in this chapter, the formative tasks and the materials are provided here to support you to consider some of those skills that you're starting to learn anyway in other modules generally around assessment and children's learning generally, to take those skills and to really focus just on one pupil, one child who may be experiencing difficulty in progressing their own learning, who may be experiencing difficulty in accessing the lessons, the concepts, the curriculum that is being provided in their class context, whether it's a special class or a mainstream class. Okay, so in this chapter, I have, again, the Loom videos, which are also provided with ISL interpretation. They're the same videos, okay? And in this chapter, the tasks are broken down. So you'll see there's a formative task here. And that's the first step. So in this first formative task, I'm trying to get you to think about questions you would be asking yourself as a teacher in a classroom. Okay, so you have somebody like John who is not seeming to be progressing. Even in this context, he's in a special class, but even in that context, he's not progressing. And you're trying to work out, in terms of thinking about what you know, what else do you need to know? Okay, so here's what you already know. And what I'm asking you to do in this task is to answer the questions in that profile. So what do you already know about John? What do you not know? And how will you find that out? Okay, and there's my feedback on that. Okay, the second step here then is, now that you've worked that out, how do you go about doing a diagnostic assessment? So a diagnostic assessment is a particular lens on assessment, and it is usually relates to one child. It would be very rare that you would be doing a diagnostic assessment with the whole class. You might be carrying out diagnostic assessments with multiple children in a class, but usually because they are not progressing and you can't work out why. So you're trying to get much more in-depth understanding of the child's learning profile. So again, here you have a Loom video which gives you the concepts, or the basics of what diagnostic assessment is. And then for that same child, John, I have provided you with 6 samples of his work. So these are, the teacher did far more than this for the diagnostic assessment. She also diagnostically assessed maths, and she also had far more literacy and language assessments than I've included here. But there's enough here to give you a sense of what's been looked for, okay? And to give you a sense of John's current learning profile. So what you're being asked to do, what you were asked to do in this diagnostic assessment, is to look for patterns of strength and patterns of error. Okay, so what does he do consistently well? Okay, what has he mastered? And then what has he half got? He does it right sometimes, but doesn't do it right other times. And then where are the consistent errors in his samples? Okay. And here, this video here will guide you through some of those tasks. I'm giving you a prompt or some guidance in engaging in those samples here. And then here's my response. I did the task, and this is my written analysis here. And I'm just going to bring you into this for a minute, because I want you to see the detail of this. So, for example, in that first assessment test, it was a phonics test that was assessing John's ability to read the sounds in the task. Now, on the Loom video, I go through that, okay? But here you will see I am pulling out what he has based on that assessment, that piece of work, that his sample. I'm able to pull out what he can do, what he's mastered, and then what he's half got and not got at all. And you'll see here, it looks like he's read all of the words that have ST at the end correctly. Whereas with some other words, for example, magic E words, which have U and E at the end, they're all wrong. Okay, so I can see patterns. Now this is all on the Loop page and on the Loom video on the Loop page, where I guide you through some of those tasks. Okay, so the reason I'm flagging this is those tasks were deliberately set over the last few weeks to give you a chance to walk yourself through some of these skills, supported by my videos and by my responses for the task itself. And then arising from that task, the third thing you were to do is just to write one learning outcome. So based on John's strengths and his areas for development or his learning needs, not his weaknesses. So in here, in my analysis, when I looked at the patterns, I did all 6 assignments, all 6 tasks. And then I pulled out John's strengths from all of them. And I pulled out not his errors. Okay, the errors were in my analysis, but I flipped those errors into areas of development. So they are written positively, not negatively. I am not listing here what he cannot do. I am listing here what he needs to learn, arising from what I know he cannot do or can have to. Okay, so they're my list of needs. Oops, sorry. And then the next task is to write a learning target. Okay, so I'm asking you here in this formative task, just scroll down, to having got to the end of this formative task, to just consider what you would think would be a really important thing arising from that big, huge, long list of needs that John has. Choose one of them and construct it into a learning target for 6 months hence. So you're his SET or his special class teacher, and you are trying to prioritize, pull out what you consider to be the most important learning area for development or learning need, and write a learning target. And again, if we'd been face to face, we would have done all of this in a co-taught class. So I did it with last year's first years, and what I have here are about 40 or 50 of their responses in each of these 2 links, documents. So I'll just go into the reading one. So they did this last year for John in class with me, and then I took up all of their samples, and I've taken about 30 or 40 learning targets for reading for John and 30 or 40 for writing. So this is exactly what student number 1 wrote. And then the blue writing is my feedback to him or her. So I am now evaluating this learning outcome. Likewise here. So this is exactly what one of the students wrote, and this is my feedback to that student teacher from last year's class. Now I'm showing you this because while I am remote from you, every single thing that I would have done in class with you since we broke up, that we would have done in those live classes, has been replicated here on loop, either through the use of my videos guiding you through some of the samples, or by me doing each task, I am providing you with a point of reference so that you can self-assess your own work. So I've either done each of the formative tasks myself, or I have given you some of the responses last year's students gave with my feedback to them. Okay, so that is how I've tried to support you as much as I can without doing this live in class. And the third, or the chapter number 9 there, is around collaborative practice, co-teaching, working with SNAs and others. So I'm going to focus you on working with other teachers and SNAs, the materials that we have there for both of those things. Okay, so with this particular work, I found because of our remoteness in this context, I'm focusing you in on co-teaching and working with other teachers. I think it is the most relevant, followed by working with SNAs, because some of you will be over, even on your school placement, will be working with SNAs at some point over the next few years. And you may or may not be working in co-teaching situations as well when you're out on placement. So that's what I'm focusing you on here. And we won't forget about the parents, but we will bring them back in over the course of the program when I get to touch base with you again. So in this section, I have included materials here. Let me just go back up. Now, let me see, co-teaching, IEP process. Okay, so here, in terms of handouts, I have handouts here, and down here, each of the 6 co-teaching models are explained in 3 or 4 minute videos, and they are demonstrated. So each of these videos is 3 or 4 minutes long, and each video shows one of 6 models of co-teaching. So I suppose I'm highlighting this to you because most people may have a vision of co-teaching where you have maybe station teaching, which some of you may have seen on school placement, and that seems to be really the model of co-teaching that's been taken up a lot in Irish primary schools particularly. Or you may have the one teach, one assist model of co-teaching. But what's important here is to know and understand that there are actually 6 models of co-teaching, and that 2 or more teachers can work in lots of different formats to support children who need to be supported in a classroom. And usually, in most cases, this would be where the SET might come into the classroom and work with the class teacher, or you may be working with SNAs in a classroom, and you may be considering how you might maximize their interaction in a lesson for in that context. So in this chapter, the materials here are mainly are for you to read, and the videos, rather than creating a video, I have provided you with 6 co-teaching videos that illustrate better than I could by explaining it to you, that illustrate what each model looks like and what it's for. And again, I've done the task. Okay, so I asked you to look at the 6 videos to identify the teaching strategies. So within that relates back to chapter 7. The types of strategies that the teachers are using, and to describe the model. And then I did it myself. There's my response. So try not to, if you have not already engaged in these formative tasks, try not to peek and do them yourselves first. But that's my point of reference for you there. And then the last chapter is the chapter around the assignment. So I have tried to keep this as simple as possible, while at the same time, giving you an opportunity to practice the skills in those 3 preceding chapters. So in this section, I have the guidelines, the marking rubric, the group protocol. As you know, there's a group protocol in the BEd that will have to be somewhat tweaked for your assignment itself. And this is the assignment. So here, before you start doing this assignment, you need to read that guideline document, okay? That's the most important thing, that you have read through that and you are clear on exactly what you're supposed to do, and read the assignment's response sheet. So this assignment response sheet is where you complete your responses. This is what you fill in. And it is a Word document because you'll have to be able to access it to write on it. Sorry, there's a different thing coming up there. Okay, so this is your document. And whether you are working on your own, so I've given you a choice of working on your own, or in pairs, triads, or groups of 4. So even if you're working alone, you just fill in this cover sheet and you just put your own name in. If you are working with one or 2 or 3 others, you need to decide who the lead person is, and that lead person is the person who will take responsibility to submit. You don't need to if you're in a group, you don't need to each individually submit. The choose your group activity has already told Loop what group you're in. So say Anne-Marie Farrell and Rob Lowney are working together, and Anne-Marie Farrell is the lead. I will submit the assignment, and it will automatically transfer to Rob's Loop account because myself and Rob have put ourselves into a group together. Okay. And here you've chosen your groups. So if you're working with somebody else, I am hoping you've chosen wisely. So there should be no issue with group dynamics and work ethic, because that choice is being left to you. So I'm assuming that everyone will be able to say yes here because you've chosen the people you're working with. Okay. And down here then, these are just key all of the instructions are in the guideline document I showed you earlier, but these are key reminders at this point. And as you know, there are 3 tasks and you have to complete 2 of them. So you just fill in your answers when you're here and convert this to a PDF and upload it at the submission box. And I will talk to you about that at the submission in a moment. So I'm just going to take you back to this Loop page. So you see the 3 tasks, okay? So the first task is for you to read this extract of the lesson plan, which mirrors the lesson. And this lesson is subtitled, this one has ISL, they're the same lesson, even though the pictures look different. The YouTube has just grabbed a different shot, a different still. So it's the same lesson, it's about 5 minutes long, it's a maths lesson. And you are, for this task, you are in the shoes of a school placement tutor. So you are looking at this teacher's teaching, the enactment of his teaching and his planning for teaching. So one of the questions, somebody asked a question on Padlet there during the week. Are you supposed to look at the lesson plan or the video or both? You're supposed to look at both because they're both about teaching. Here is the lesson plan is planning for teaching, and what you're observing is the enactment of teaching. But they're both about teaching. They're not 2 different things. They both should dovetail. And you're this teacher's school placement tutor. So you're giving feedback to this person based on what you consider his strengths in planning and enacting teaching, and what you would consider would be suggestions for improvement. Okay, so where do you think maybe are there areas for improvement for this teacher? Okay, and the actual questions or the framework for that is on the document, the Word document I've just shown you. Task 2 is based on a child called Annie, and Annie, what I have here is Annie's writing sample. So Annie's writing sample is exactly as Annie provided it for the teacher. Okay, you can ignore the Appendix 14 thing, that's just from an assignment. So here is Annie's written sample, okay? And that's exactly scanned exactly as she wrote it. And then here I have typed up a transcript of Annie's sample. Okay, so here is the exact same sample, and that's I've typed up what she hand wrote just to be sure that you can access it and that it does kind of align with what you think or saw. Okay, so that's my interpretation in typed form of what Annie wrote. Okay, so what you're doing is looking through Annie's sample for patterns of strength, patterns of error, and remember so the questions I think on the task document are, what are her strengths and what does she need to learn? What are the areas for her learning needs, her areas for development, and to write one learning outcome for Annie. Okay, so you're looking at Annie individually. Task 1 is asking you to consider the class generally. And in the third task, we pull some of these things together. as well as looking at co-teaching. So on this video, here, when you go to this link, you'll see the video. It's on the SESS website. When you click on this, it'll bring you into a page with a few videos. You need to scroll down to classic team teaching, and those instructions are there on the response sheet. So that's the first 2 minutes of that video, but it's on our loop page anyway, with ISL interpretation. But you'll be able to see the 2 minutes pulled out, cropped from that bigger video. Okay, so look at the video and answer the questions on the task sheet that I showed you earlier, which are about the co-teaching model, but also about the teaching strategies that the two teachers are using in this co-teaching model, which actually relates back to chapter 7, which is around being able to use, for you student teachers to be able to use the vocabulary of teaching to describe what you're doing. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm also going to stop talking and just go into the chat for a minute here to see. So does parallel and alternative teaching have to be carried out by 2 teachers or 1 teacher and the SNA? That's a good question. Teaching should always be carried out by teachers, okay? So the question is, parallel and alternative teaching, does it have to be 2 teachers or 1 teacher and a special needs assistant? So the first thing to say is teaching should always be carried out by teachers. That's your job. Normally what a special needs assistant will do, like technically a special needs assistant is there for the care and support needs of the students. And in Ireland, we have a very, very narrow definition of that SNA role. However, in reality in classrooms, that can often translate into a special needs assistant supporting a child separately, but they should never ever be teaching something new, a new concept or a new skill. That's not their job. It's not their job to roll out a program. That's your job. So an SNA could be supporting a student by alone, or a pair of students, by reinforcing or reteaching or re-explaining or providing an opportunity to practice a learning concept or a skill again, but not teaching a brand new task. Anne-Marie, I'm just wondering if we have to submit the tasks as well as the assignment, or are the tasks just for our own learning? I presume you're talking there about the formative tasks. The formative tasks are for your own learning. The answers to all of those tasks are already on loop. I've done them. Okay, so those formative tasks are for your own learning. They're there because they mirror, they provide a platform for you to practice your skills so that you can engage with the assignments, which is asking you to demonstrate those skills again. Okay, so you do not need to submit the formative tasks from loop. They are just for you. How would you include an SNA in the class to support students? So if you're including an SNA in the class to support students, you would need to consider that SNA firstly in terms of planning. So what the SNA is doing, so the SNA in a class is part of your methodologies. So that person is there supporting a child, most likely in your lesson. If that's the case, then you need to consider in your planning and in your enactment of planning for teaching and enactment of teaching, how you're going, what that person is doing and how you're going to interact with them. So it could be that in a lesson plan, in the introduction, in the development, in the conclusion, you've thought about the SNA supporting certain children. It could be, for example, in the introduction, if you ask a question, you allow the SNA to answer the question and you give the SNA feedback because she's modeling the language you're looking for from the child, for example, okay? Or you may, in the development of the lesson plan, have written into the lesson plan how the SNA is going to support certain children. So it could be that she will mirror the language that you've already taught. It could be that she will provide prompts for engaging in a group task or whatever it is. Okay. Do we have to reference anything on Loop to support our points, or is, yeah, no, you do not. Okay. The assignment, you do not need to reference anything on Loop. The assignment is set up in such a way that it will become fairly evident whether you've developed the skills that I've asked you to practice on Loop. So you can use there's no need for any references to anything. What I'm looking for is your skills and your demonstrating your thinking and your understanding of teaching and learning across those 3 tasks. Can we incorporate content of the assessment strand? Absolutely. In this module, when answering questions on strengths and weaknesses, yes, you can. You can incorporate all of your learning. That's the point. Okay, so that would be good if you're able to incorporate other elements of learning from other modules, or even from when you're on something you learned from, you know, on your school placement, feedback that somebody gave you in your school placement. That's useful. Avoid the word weaknesses. Okay, so in the lesson you are looking for the teacher's strengths, and then you are giving them recommendations or suggestions for improvement, as opposed to telling them what they're bad at, what they're not good at. All right, so be careful around your language. And the same when you're looking at the individualized assessment for the child. You are looking at what's the strengths, and then the areas for the learning needs or areas for development, not a list of things they're bad at. Okay, so that's a key thing. Weakness, when teachers identify weaknesses, we tend to reverse ourselves and the child into a corner. Or indeed, when teacher educators look at weaknesses, it's much better to flip that. You will see the weaknesses, but flip them into suggestions for going forward, areas for development. Okay. Can the SNA be involved in lesson planning evaluation? They will be involved in lesson planning or evaluation because you would be linking in with the SNA and getting their feedback. And particularly in relation to evaluation at the end of a lesson, because they're seeing stuff you're just not seeing. So your lesson evaluation should include a 2-minute chat at some point with the SNA to get their feedback on what they saw. And lesson planning, when you're planning the lesson, you might have already prepared something like that example I gave you earlier, where you're going to ask the SNA to engage in the task and give him or her feedback. You could only do that if you had set it up beforehand with the SNA. So that would be the level of planning. But the planning and actual lesson planning for teaching is the teacher's role. But collaborating with the SNA is part of that role and should inform planning and lesson evaluation. Any others there? Let me see now. I'm just checking that we have all of the questions already answered. Parallel, do we have to reference anything on Loop? Can we incorporate content? Yeah. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions that have been typed in. Does anyone want to ask a question? Rob, is there anything I'm missing there?
No, not at all. If anyone wants to ask a question, you can just raise your hand using the button in Zoom. So just make sure that on your bottom toolbar in Zoom, you have clicked participants to bring in the participants panel. Okay. And once that's there, you should see a little icon to raise your hand. So if you want to ask a question, just raise your hand and Anne-Marie can give you the microphone.
I'm not seeing any. Okay, and nothing new on chat. Can it, okay, there's one new question on the chat. Okay, it can all be bullet points, right? Yes. One of the questions that was asked on Padlet was about the word count. I have put in a word count of 500 to 1,000 words. So I've given you 3 tasks and you're choosing 2 of them. So that's the first thing. You don't need to do 2 of those. If you do all 3 and submit all 3, only the first 2 will be marked. So don't do that. Just choose do all 3 if you wish, and self-assess to see what you consider to be the best 2 and put those in, okay? The word count is between 500 and 1,000 words. Now, I think you'll be at the lower end of that because most of the questions just require short answers, phrases, and should be answered in bullet points. Don't waffle. Don't use padding. Padding indicates that maybe you're waffling. So don't do that. Get to the point. Be clear. So if you're writing a list of strengths for that class teacher, if you're evaluating the class teacher's lesson, bullet point, phrases. What has he done really, really well? And bullet point, what are your suggestions for improvement? So I think your word count will be, if you're to the point, it will be at the lower end of the word count. There will be some areas that might require you to have full sentences or string a couple of sentences together, but really I've kept it simple for you, and to be honest, for me to mark online as well. So get to the point. I think most of your time won't be spent writing. I don't think you're going to spend a huge amount of time writing. I think most of your time will be spent thinking. And thinking it through, and if you're in a pair or a triad or a group of 4, chatting to each other and refining. But I don't think a huge amount of time will be spent writing this. I'm not looking for your ability to reference or cite. I'm not looking for your ability to write beautiful English paragraphs. I'm looking for your ability to analyze teaching and learning. That's what I'm looking for, your ability and your skills and your understanding in planning, teaching, assessment. That's actually what's being looked for. So that will be clear if you bullet it. Okay. Any other questions, even on the chat? No. Could I might finish here then. Can you just give me a thumbs up if you think you're happy enough to finish? Okay. Okay. Just finally, I want to say a thank you to Rob. And can I also say thank you to Alana, Tristan, Maura and Robin for turning your cameras on, because that makes me feel much less lonely out here. So thank you very much for doing that to the 4 of you. Best of luck with it. And I'm not disappearing when I end this class. I'm at the other end of the Padlet page and I check it every morning. So if you have a question, put your question up on Padlet. It will be answered at the most within 24 hours, but usually within the hour, to be honest. Okay, so the Padlet page is there. The link to Padlet is on Loop, and so on. On Loop, I think I had said to you on the guidelines and on the document to submit my assignment on the SIE section. And what I'm going to change that to ask you to submit it into a submission section, because Zita's where are we now? Zita's assignment will go into the same place. So let me just show you where that is. I'll be emailing you all about this anyway. So I'm just going to ask you to submit into here, submit assignment here. Okay. And the reason I haven't opened this already is at the submission box is because we still had a couple of people who weren't enrolled in their groups. They hadn't made their group choices, which can, I just know from 2 years ago doing this before, it caused issues. I hadn't noticed it, and it caused issues when people went to submit. So we're nearly there with people putting themselves into the group selection. So I will be opening that that submission box today, and it will be open until Friday evening of this day week. Okay. So look, I hope that's all okay. If you have any questions, come back to me on Padlet. I'm there. And otherwise, thank you for your engagement today. And there's 2 more questions here. Okay, hold on now. Oh, it's just saying thank you. All right, that's all right. All right, thanks everybody. And I'll see you hopefully on the other side. Bye. Rob, I'm just going to end this meeting now, okay?